Thank you for staying with us. You're still watching The Breakfast on Plus TV Africa. Right now, it's time to take the global stories that has made it to the front pages of our national dailies. And joining us to review the papers this morning is Professor Kamilu Sani Fage. He's from the Department of Political Science, Bayero University, Kano. Good morning, sir. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
Always a pleasure. All right, we begin with the Punch this morning, and the Punch leads with 2027 coalition. Atiku camp offers Obi VP role in one-term deal. And the writer here says opposition leaders may dump SDP for ADC as new coalition platform. So, of course, 2027 is around the corner. There's a lot of talks about, the political space in Nigeria and what's going to happen there. And, the formation of a new coalition, especially if they want to oust the current ruling party, which is the APC. And here right now, the PDP, where Atiku, was the presidential candidate for the last election, is offering Peter Obi the VP role. I know that Peter Obi was in the PDP before he had to leave to come into the Labour Party as the presidential candidate at the time. But seeing the fact that there is the possibility of a coalition between Atiku and Peter Obi, what do you think about this? Is it a deal that you're seeing that might come to fruition? Or, how better do you think this can even happen to ensure that the people have some level of, choice when it comes to 2027, and it's not just going to be a one-party state like we're seeing most, PDP member even moving over to APC. What are your thoughts, and what do you think would happen? What do you foresee?
Yeah, you see, what I foresee is that there is likelihood of reincarnating the 2019 elections. The ticket was Atiku and Peter Obi when they contested against Buhari before they parted their way. What this shows is that actually our politics is not built on any principle or ideology. It is just an issue of self-serving interests. So long as their interests, they see their interests will be better off, they will come together. So now that they are seeing themselves to be facing a formidable challenge, so that is why there is all this horse trading, trying to come together. So I see the possibility that perhaps they will come together and they may try to unseat the government, the ruling party, I mean. But the fact is this. Now I think it is too early for both sides to be talking about this. We are almost halfway through. We are not yet 2 years through the government, and yet we are now, the country is overheated with this issue, either defection or coalition or these things, which legally and constitutionally I think is a violation of the electoral law and the constitution of Nigeria, that election matters should not be on until about 150 days to the election. But here we are halfway through, everything is in the offing. This one are trying to woo the other side. This one are trying to form coalition and so on. So I think this is uncalled for at this very particular time.
Well, I mean, we'll just wait and see what happens. Like you said, it's early talks, but I'm sure for a lot of people, they want to know what they're doing. And before you know it, a year and a half is just going to be here, and campaign season would start. But let's just see how it happens. All right, another story on the Punch here says federal government electricity debt balloons by 800 billion naira. That's according to the Senate. And of course, they've been speaking about, electricity subsidy and how they have to take it out and whatnot, because there's a lot of debt that, they're owing. But one thing we always speak about is the epileptic power supply in Nigeria. As I speak to you, I do not have power in my house, and I had to run diesel all through the night. And there are so many people that cannot even afford that because diesel is also expensive. And if we had, adequate power supply in Nigeria, I'm sure that would help a whole lot because it's a bloodline for any economy. But seeing the fact that the federal government, or rather the Senate in this case, is already speaking about the electricity debt that has ballooned to 800 billion, what would you expect to see with the electricity sector if, for instance, peradventure, they have to take it out? How can they take it out and ensure that people still get adequate power supply in Nigeria? Maybe it's not going to be 24 hours, but I'm sure 20 hours would do if we have 20 hours of power in every single spot in Nigeria. So every single state, every single local government, everywhere in Nigeria. Is there a possibility that we might see that?
No, we are not going to see it. One, given the corruption that, bedevil the area. Secondly, given the fact that you cannot supply what we can generate. After all, what is the capacity of Nigeria and what is the need of Nigeria in terms of light? And thirdly, and most importantly, is the fact that we tend to ignore the multiplier effect of cheap energy in Nigeria. So by the time you now remove the subsidy, as World Bank called, and this is what happened. Just last week, the World Bank guy said that we have to remove subsidy and in electricity. 2 days later, the minister come out and say that they are going to remove the subsidy. And now the assembly is coming. They are all, means to now cushion Nigerians to see that there is need to remove. So if the federal government is owing 800 billion in 2 months, do you blame Nigerians? You blame, in 4 months, you blame the government for doing that. But all these things are preparing the way for removal of subsidy in electricity. And I'm telling you, if they do that, already the industries that are collapsing, the old ladies that are moving out of Nigeria because of the high energy cost in Nigeria, plus corruption, plus all other things that make it harsh for people to invest. So I think the effect will be more disastrous than what Nigeria is going to say in terms of removing of subsidy. Like just what happened with oil. You see, the propagandists were telling us that when you remove subsidy, oil will be available, the life will be better, and so on. Look at what is happening now. The living condition of Nigeria has deteriorated to a level that we are now considered at the capital of the world capital of poverty. Then we have to take this into consideration. So I think those putting here a legislature saying this, a minister saying this, and like I said, it's just preparing ground for the eventual removal. And we don't seem to learn a lesson from the impact of such removal, especially given, like what I say, the multiplier effect of energy and other things, economy, industry, social condition, and so many things. We are just talking to the ordinary person as if what we need is just electricity in our house, in our homes rather. But electricity is much more than that. Yeah. Okay, it is the basis of industrial development, and if you cut it, we are just cutting our nose to spite our face.
And you know what's even funny with this is, if they take it out, like you said, we might not see the electricity the way we want it to be. But the fact that people do not even have the purchasing power, for people who were moved over to Band A, I know how so many of them were complaining because before you switch on your lights, before you turn on your AC, the power is done, it's finished, right? And you have to buy more. And where is the money going to come from? Especially if salaries are not increasing, there's inflation on every single item in Nigeria. So even having to fuel your car, it can be a hassle. So imagine all of that if people do not have the purchasing power to even buy this in the first place. And let's be honest, there are countries that subsidizes one thing or the other for their citizens. So you wonder, what is Nigeria doing? And I'm sure if everything was okay and you say we're taking out electricity subsidy alone and everything is fine, you do not have to provide your own health care, you do not have to think of private schools for your kids, you do not have to go through the hassle of finding money to buy fuel and even seeing the fuel in the first place. If everything was okay, then that might just seem like something to just withstand, and at least there's the cushioning of the effect of whatever it might be. But having to bamboozle Nigerians with so many things at the same time might just be so much of a trouble, and I don't know what's going to happen with that. Anyways, another story that we can look at here is, CBN slashes federal government loan by over 4 trillion naira. I don't know if that's something to celebrate. What do you think about it?
Yeah, you see, to some extent, it's something that we can celebrate if there will be economic discipline to cut all the loans in this. But this is like ways and means which the government, the bank is talking about. That is like an overdraft to the government, to push in, to finance some projects. This is just, scratching the surface of the system. And the politics around the thing is more than the real achievement that Nigerians should celebrate about. By talking about just cutting these ways and means, they are not talking about the real debt Nigeria owes. Now, if you look at a very simple statistics on the debt, you see that this is an insignificant thing. After all, it is just a overdraft that the government will go to the bank and get it and do this. But in substantial time, we owe a lot of things. I think from the most crude estimate now, the debt on Nigeria is over 122 trillion naira, which is about 90-something billion dollars. Then when you can say ways and means, I don't think there's anything that you can beat your chest and say there is a positive step in that direction, except for the political aspect of it, for the propaganda aspect of it. So that is when we have to make noise about it. So the government can beat its chest, that this has been cut down, but in reality, they haven't touched the actual debt that Nigeria owes. In fact, on the contrary, Nigeria is borrowing more despite the huge debt on us.
That's quite interesting. On the Nigerian Tribune, it says over 4 trillion naira debt. AMCON AMP step up strategy to intensify recovery efforts. And we are just talking about the electricity sector and inflation and whatnot. There's also another story here that says, despite positive macro environment, inflation is still a threat to economic stability growth, LCCI warns. But I want to take this story on the Punch still that says, Jakba doctor drain devastates 12 states. So, of course, we've seen the brain drain in our system here, where so many people are moving abroad, just for a better life, like they like to say, right? And 12 states right now are suffering from this. They have this brain drain, or the doctor drain, like we see it here, just because people are moving abroad. How do you think, the government can help to ensure that people want to stay here, our talents are staying here? Because if you go to the United States of America, for instance, most of the doctors are Nigerians. So it means that we have the talents, but we do not have the capacity to be able to keep them here. What do you think Nigeria needs to do to ensure that we're not just exporting? Because even if you're exporting and you're making money from it, that would have been great. But we're not just sending these people away.
You see, the one simple term is to create a conducive environment that will retain them here. And how do you create a conducive environment? One is look at what pushed them out of the country, and look at what attracts them in the country. To other side. So there is what is known in sociology that there is a push factor and there is a pull factor.
Yeah.
So how do you address this push and pull factor? Is the simplest solution. One is the condition. You see, the condition of service is very prohibitive in Nigeria. Pay is poor, equipment are not there, and look at the ratio of a doctor to the patient. All these things are prohibitive. And even if you do that, there are no drugs, no equipment, nothing, you have them. So there is general neglect of the system and the people. And the pull factor that what we are lacking here in Nigeria, or what we deny ourselves in Nigeria, is what others are offering. So that is why people are migrating to greener posture, because of the attraction that they get from that place. And one thing is, we make a mistake. Even if they will remit money to Nigeria, that is not what will solve our problem. We have health challenges, and the problem is that our leaders do not believe in the system. What they offer to the ordinary person is that they don't believe in it. That is why with any small ailment, they will now pack their things and have go out for medical tourism. So look at what happened in the past. I think I was reading a news that there was a time in the 60s and late 70s when the king of Saudi Arabia prepared to come to Ibadan Teaching Hospital for medical treatment from Saudi Arabia to Nigeria. Now, who will come, even from Cameroon or let's say our neighbors like Niger? If they have the option, why should they come to Nigeria? They would rather go out. So I think we have to create that conducive environment that will retain the best and retain all others. And the other thing is, we have to look at our own medical policies. You see, the way up to now, we are blocking chances. Go to our universities, even the large university. You see, what do you call it, MDCN, will just give them like 100 slot per year. While you have so many people who want to study medicine, you block it. So we make it a kind of a restricted cartel for only these people. So these are the comprehensive policies that I think we have to take if we are to head up this issue of JAPA in Nigeria.
Thank you so much for that. Let's look at the business NG. The business NG leads with FAAC. 33 states repay 1.85 trillion naira debt from oil gains. And, you know, some of the states here, Enugu, Kebbi, Niger, top most expensive states. That's according to the NBS. But looking at this was one of our top trending stories this morning. I think Delta was one of the highest states that had repaid their debts, Lagos, Ogun, and whatnot. What's your take on this from oil gains? Even though, you know, it's been said that we don't know how much we make from oil. But here we're seeing that we're paying our debts. How is this supposed to translate to the daily lives of the people?
Yeah, you see, it wouldn't translate positively. One is the fact that when you see the park allocation, what we are getting is so huge. We forget that, you know, the cost of things in 2 years ago is about less than 10% of what it is now. So when you have such huge money, you know, it will not amount to anything. Secondly, this culture of borrowing is a dangerous thing by the state, by the federal government, and the local government. You see, a simple thing is you cut your coat according to your clothes. What we have is we have this tendency to borrow, and by the time this amount is cut from the state, I think there will be problems. Some of them will not even be able to pay salaries. Talk less of, you know, doing services, offering services to the state. So I think what we are seeing here is part of the, you know, alarming trend in debt at all levels of government. And there is also a danger that the thing that the cash cow is dwindling, meaning oil that we have. Look at what the government projected, that we are going to have, I think, 2.1 million barrels per day. Now, I think the highest is 1.5 to 1.6. There is shortfall of that. And then the value, the market value of it has deteriorated, has fallen. So these are all indications that there is need for us to, one, diversify the economy, two, to take serious step on this issue of debt and borrowing, and three, to check corruption, and four, to, you know, be prudent in terms of managing the resources.
All right. Another story here on the business entry at the bottom says analysts call for term limits for lawmakers. So, of course, it's been said that the prolonged tenure in office often disconnects lawmakers from the realities faced by, the citizens. It weakens the capacity for genuine representation, and the fact that most times they become less responsive to the needs of the people because all they're trying to do is just get political affluence in this case. What do you think about the term limits? Because since there is no cap for it, then they don't think of anything to do. They just want to be there. And in a way, they kind of lack new ideas because they're not injecting, new bloods into the system, people that are a bit more creative. So, what do you think about the fact that the analysts are, calling for this term limit for, lawmakers?
You see, this is one of the pitfalls of a democratic system, that the legislature doesn't have, time limit all over, the world. Look at America. I know of some people who are there for over 40 years. They have been in the edition. What they do is, what we should be doing or concern ourselves with is how do we get credible people? How do we make them, more productive, more responsive, more accountable to the people's wish? Part of okay, given Nigerian factor, this for a long time, or has its own pitfall, has on its own effect, negative effect, because, like they said, it is true that some of them are just have become like an institution. They feel they can do anything, and they feel like they own the system. Therefore, there is a limited sense of responsiveness and accountability to the people. But I think, like I said, this is one of the pitfalls of democracy. What we need to do is to look at the way to make them more accountable to the people. By the time we now try to look at these things, we are just concerned with elite the dimension. And the elite dimension is, it is my turn, then it will be somebody's turn, and so on and so forth. Instead of making it decent, let's try to make sure that our legislature is autonomous, is independent, and that the people are accountable. Look at our neighbor here, Ghana. You see members of the assembly have their offices, and they must be there at least once in a month and interact with their constituents and get their own wishes and go back to it. So by the time you now put this in, you strengthen the laws, about governance, about representation. I don't think you need to, they say that you have to put time limit. But in the time being, since we have all these problems, the idea of time limit may be possible. I mean, may be attractive, but I don't think it will ensure that productivity of the legislature that we assume, because you will just be recycling people here and there, and the whole thing will be, self-serving services. Rather than, instead of that, I think we have to make it more accountable. That will have been the best option for Nigeria.
Well, we'll see. Another story I want to take here on the business NG says, frustration grows as CNG promise fails to deliver. So, of course, Nigerians are, becoming restless because the federal government had already promised, the vehicle conversion plan. And months after this, was promised, they've still not seen the light of day. And a lot of people are just saying, it's supposed to be free. They haven't seen that. What's your take on this? And also, one thing that I know was that the president had promised 100 CNG buses, which we still haven't seen. And Nigerians are, obviously expressing their frustration now about this. Your comment, please.
Yeah, I think this whole idea of the CNG, is just politics. The reality is that, one, even the areas that the government promised to do it, they have not delivered the thing. Now, take, for example, if you have 100 buses in Nigeria, where will they go? They will not go anywhere. And look at even the places where the government promised that they are going to have this combustion. I don't think they constitute up to 30% of the areas in Nigeria. About 70% or 75% of Nigeria has been ignored about this. The only thing is you concentrate in like Lagos and some other places. Nigeria is not Lagos. Nigeria is not Abuja, is not Port Harcourt alone. It is Nigeria as we are talking about. So you see, the whole thing is a political gimmick. And that is why it cannot materialize, because they know even if they are able to do it, it will be too little and it will not make any impact about that. So I think they are just buying time, which is the usual thing with our politicians. They buy time, they make promises that they are not going to fulfill. And this, as we approach 2027, will be another campaign issue that we we are going to see, so that at least it will attract votes for whoever wants to say he wants to make it. But to me, I think the whole idea of that CNG is a, like I said, is a political trick, is a political gimmick, and not a reality to address the real issue of Nigeria.
I think most times when they, make these promises, of course, because they knew that the removal of fuel subsidy was going to happen, so they kind of just made this promise for people to say, oh, you know what, this is going to cushion the effect of that. But empty promises, you just put them into the air, and then they never just get fulfilled, and that's what we're seeing here. But I hope that they still try as much as possible to be able to do this, so that we can have the public trust. People can trust them, especially if this same administration wants to come in for the next the next election cycle, for the next season. So hopefully they get to do that, and the public can say, you know what, we trust that you would say something and you go ahead to do it, not just making empty promises that we don't get to see. All right, the last one I'm going to take here is on the Nature News, and this talks about recycling, and it says global recycling rates decline amid materials consumption surge, and that's according to a report. And of course, there's talks about climate change. There's another story here that says Nigeria's climate change living crisis reps deputy speaker. That's according to him. What do you think about what we're doing with the earth? Because the earth is just all we have, and we have to take care of it. And we're already seeing that the global recycling rates are beginning to drop. I know that in the UK they are heavy on recycling. You recycle your papers, your bottles, your plastic waste and whatnot. In Nigeria, we're still catching up, let's be honest. In Lagos State, there was the ban for plastic bags and whatnot, even though there are still supermarkets that are still selling plastic bags right now. But what's your take on the fact that the global recycling rate is beginning to drop, and what's going to happen to the earth as an ecosystem?
Now, you see, what we are seeing is that we are not just abusing the system, but we are over-abusing the system, because by this issue of recycling dropping, I think we are heading towards a very serious challenge. Already, we know the side effect of this by not biodegradable substance. We are using rubber, we are using these things and so on. In other climes, like you mentioned London, maybe UK, France, and the European countries and the American countries, they are serious about this. I know that if you go to their places, you see that households, people are so disciplined that even if you want to take your trash outside, you have to have different bags. This is where you put recyclable things. This is what you put this, and now you tie it and put it out. But look at our own culture here. We don't. Even Lagos, I think, is just out of necessity, because Lagos is overcrowded with all these things, and Lagos is just an ideal thing, not a typical Nigerian city. Lagos is something different. It is trying to be more of like other countries than Nigeria. But if you now go to even Abuja, you'll see it is an eyesore. If you look at, you see how trash are, dump everywhere. Talk less of old cities like Kano, Katsina, Maiduguri, and other places where we don't have all these policies. So, but I think it is up to the policy makers to take this seriously and see that we try to go by it, because a stitch in time saves nine. We are already seeing the effect of this abuse of the environment. And if we don't take any necessary step, I think it will be over abusing the environment.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think I love the fact that you said a stitch in time saves nine. I don't even think we're doing as much here in Nigeria. I was in Banana Island, I think 2 weeks ago, just taking a boat from there, you know, with my friends, just going on a cruise. And the amount of plastic waste that I saw right there, and I'm like, this is Ikoyi, this is Banana Island, this is not Makoko, but you're seeing so much plastic waste right there, and we're not just taking care of our waterways, we're just, you know, dumping things here and there. And I think it's something that we definitely need to look into, because if everywhere gets blocked with plastic, and the funny thing is plastics live over 2,000 years. So imagine what will happen then if everywhere is clogged up. But I think we definitely need to, you know, look at this. A stitch in time saves nine. Ensure that we're taking care of Mother Earth, because that's all we've got. Anyways, we want to say thank you so much for coming, Professor. It's always a pleasure reviewing the papers with you. Thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Have a wonderful day, sir.
Same to you.
All right, I've been speaking with Professor Kamilu Sani Fage. He's from the Department of Political Science, Bayero University, Kano. And we've just been looking at the fact that we've just been looking at the global stories that made it to the front pages of our national dailies. We'll go on a short break now. When we return, we'll be discussing the fact that SEREP, you know, is already asking the NNPCL to account for 500 billion naira, $500 billion in this case, missing funds. Please stay with us.